So looking at the excess cold hazard, looking at the operating guidance, we can see that our property for a pre-1920s house is occupied by a family. Now they notice that the at-risk group is persons over 65 years. So we're assuming that the over 65s are living at the property. A little bit older than the falls hazards. And so you see that the average property has quite a high likelihood of 1 in 330, and then quite a severe spread of harm outcomes. So you've got 34% chance of class 1s, 6% chance of class 2s, 18% chance of class 3s, and 42% chance of class 4s. So this gives us an average HHSRS score for an average property actually of a C, 1066. So for pre-1920s properties, we can say that an average pre-1920s property will have a category 1 band C property, hazard in it, which is quite astounding when you think of the number of properties that there are like that in the UK. So if we look down to the relevant matters affecting the likelihood and harm outcomes, things to consider are thermal insulation, any damp in the property, so damp in a position where it's likely to affect the level of the insulation. Now in our property we've got solid walls, so we've actually got 3 external walls. And so we're going to see quite a bit of heat loss through the walls of the property. And you've also only got 50 mil of loft insulation in the roof cavity, and because of the leak that we've got in the roof, some of that insulation is going to be soaked. So that damp coming through from the roof is going to affect the level of insulation in our property. There may have been some settling in the insulation because of how long it's been in there. However, we're not sure about that. The type of heating provision, so it's an inappropriate heating system. You have only the ability to heat either the 2 parts of the property, either the upper landing and leave the doors open in the hope that some of that 3 kilowatt of convector heaters heat will get into the rooms leading off from the landing on the first and the second floor, and that's very unlikely. It's a huge area for the heater to heat. And then the 1 kilowatt heater in the ground floor of the property is only going to heat a single room, so we don't have enough heating. Those heaters seem to be working well, but the controls on the heaters, so just portable convector heaters, it's likely that they've only got a heat level, and potentially they may have a timer, but you're unable to. Usually they only have a heat level, so you're likely to be unable to set a timer to have them controlled in a similar way as you would be used to with a central heating system. So for ventilation, we don't really have excessive or uncontrolled levels of ventilation at the property. So as we've got relatively tightly sealed windows, the doors they're not presenting any particular issues, and there's no notes from our inspection about there being open fireplaces, so they've been boarded up. So for our property we've got poor levels of thermal insulation, both from the existing building fabric and from the lack of insulation in the loft cavity, and some of that insulation is going to be soaked, so very ineffective. And the size of the heating system is completely inadequate for the size of the property that we have, so we're only able to heat certain areas of the property. So looking at the worked examples, we don't really have a very good choice of these for our chosen property. So this is a flat. It's not really relevant. It's a prefab concrete flat. This property has poor heating, but it's also broken into 3 self-contained flats, and it has these louvre windows, not really very similar to our property. This British Iron and Steel Federation steel walled house, again, it's not very similar to our property. So the only property that is somewhat like ours is this Victorian mid-terrace. Note this only has 2 exposed walls, which has gas central heating, which is far better than our property. But however, it has no loft insulation. And we've got some loft insulation, and some of that isn't soaked. And so we've got some small level of loft insulation. So in our property, it's of the same period, pre-1920s house, so we can see that our national average is going to be 1 in 330. So that gives us the 1 in 320 representative scale point. They've gone 1 notch worse because of the lack of loft insulation. However, we have no ability to create healthy living indoor temperatures without moving those convector heaters around. So in our property, we could certainly go 1 banding, so 1 representative scale point more likely that we're going to have harm outcomes over the next 12 months. In fact, I would say we would probably go 2 or 3 because much of that property is not going to be effectively heated. So we're from 1 in 180 to 1 in 100 to 1 in 56 and to 1 in 32. So I'm going to choose a score of 1 in 32 for this hazard.